Hello. Thank you for checking in again. Welcome to Ask the Customs Manager. We have this section here on our YouTube channel where you can actually ask questions. So you send us an email and then we answer it. Well, I answer it, right? So Julie sits in beautiful Spain and asks, what is going on in the US regarding tariffs? Tariffs have been announced from various countries at various dates on various commodities, and she has lost track. So it is the beginning of March. What actually happens now? What happens in spring 2025 as regards to US tariffs? That's the question, and that's what I'm going to answer. If you have a question on customs, export controls, or sanctions, then please just send us an email at info@customs-manager.org, and then I'll answer it in one of those YouTube videos. As simple as this. So, what happens? Well, today is the 2nd of March, and in 48 hours, so we're told, the first set of tariffs is entering into force. These will be the tariffs against Mexico and Canada, so the Mexico and Canada tariffs. They are scheduled to start March the 4th, plus additional 10% on China. And as of today, we have no indication that this will not happen. Now, everything may change within the next 48 hours, but for now, the first set of tariffs will affect imports into the US from Canada and from Mexico. In 48 hours, this will be enacted. So I've checked the authoritative source for all US policy now, Truth Social, obviously. And as you know, policy is announced via Truth Social now. So if you want to know what's going on, you gotta look at the post on Truth Social. So what have we learned on Truth Social? Well, illicit drugs are still pouring over the country from Mexico and Canada at very high and unacceptable levels. And this is despite the pledges that the US neighbors are boosting many of their efforts and police their borders. So Canada invested millions, or will invest millions, to patrol the borders, and so does Mexico. So the president goes on and says, we cannot allow this surge to continue to harm the US, and therefore, until this stops or is seriously limited, the proposed tariff schedules will go into effect on March 4th and will indeed happen as scheduled. So that's what he wrote. And then he also announced for another country, China, that already faces 10% tariffs, US tariffs, will likewise be charged an additional 10% tariff on that date. So we're then at 20%. So that means within 48 hours, we should have import tariffs into the US paid by the US importer for anything coming from Canada or Mexico. The likely consequence of that will be retaliatory tariffs. So this means importers into Canada from the US will also have to pay an additional duty, which, as far as I know from Canada, will not affect the whole range of products, but this will be gradually introduced. So here, what are the top tips? Well, we need to identify whether this is a blanco 25% on everything. Then literally it means everything. Also, typical duty suspension or reduction method may not be available, such as drawback. So we need to understand the details of how this will be enforced. And for this, I recommend that you look at maybe not Truth Social in this case, but in this case, maybe the Federal Register, but also you can look at the CSMS of the CBT, which is the information regarding participants in the ACE program, to understand how to codify and how to lodge customs declaration into the US system. And that will provide us with all the commodity codes, that will provide us with the relevant additional duties and any codes that need to be lodged within the customs declaration. Also, there'll be tariff updates, so you might want to look at the US HTS in order to understand if your products are affected. And the same would go vice versa when the retaliatory measures come into force with the Canadian tariff and the Mexican tariff. And of course, if you are sending goods from China, then you would need to know that there will be increased costs upon importation into the US, which again will have to be paid by the US importer. And then it is a question for the US importer to claim it back or not, if that's even possible. Now, so we are expecting from March, beginning of March, the tariffs to kick in. And yeah, that's it. The next step after March 4th would be then, as far as I see it, March 12th. So March 12th is when 25% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum or aluminium will come into force. So 1 week later, if you're importing steel and aluminum into the US, then that will be more expensive upon importation. So when the customs declaration gets lodged, the import price that you have to pay for bringing these goods into the country, so whoever is importer of record will then need to pay that. So that will, in the first instance, be the American company, and maybe in the second instance then be the customer who has to buy that steel or aluminum. How do you say that? Then the consequence of that is there will be retaliation tariffs again. They'll be starting from they'll be coming from all over the place. So India will enforce it, the European Union will enforce it, many other, Japan may enforce it, Australia may enforce it. Everybody who's affected by this would then counteract this measure. And we would be in a classical tariff war kind of situation where we are all opting up our tariffs. So, and that then may have further consequences. So it's a tit for tat, right? It would make free trade basically a thing of the past, and that probably globally. So that's the March 12th situation. So we'll see how that plays out. If it all comes into place, then again, for those importing into the US, it will be a matter of, do you know what commodity codes are affected? What about derived products? What about processed products, semi-processed products? And what about finished products? Where do you draw the limit on steel and aluminum? For that, you get a spreadsheet and you get an FAQ and lots of details on our website. So if you want to find out more information about that, please check that out. And then, so with that second set of tariffs, we then move to the third set of tariffs. And for that, we do have a bit of time. Luckily, this is the reciprocal tariffs on foreign nations that have duties on US imports. So that means that currently the US administration is looking at all the different trade barriers that exists for US products around the world and the tariffs that exist around the world, but not only direct tariffs, but also so-called indirect tariffs, tariffs that are hit or measures that hide costs, that have costs, trade barriers. And the response to trade barriers, according to the US administration, is tariffs. Tariffs. So we're doing tariffs. And where the US identifies a trade barrier to US exports or imports from the US, so exports out of the US and imports from the US, they will impose these tariffs. So what is an example that was mentioned? VAT. So the EU has a VAT system whereby there are 21% on VAT on goods consumed in the market, and it is understood, although widely debunked, that VAT is considered to be a non-tariff, or in this case a tariff measure, I guess. It's considered to be a tariff, and because this is a tariff, there can now be the same equivalent amount of tariffs to be imposed on the US to level the playing field. Now, I have written an article, again, on customsmanager.info, which explains why VAT is not a tariff. Now, nobody will listen, I don't know, but at least the administration will not listen, but at least you may wish to have a look and read through as to why VAT is not a tariff and is not meant to be a tariff, as well as all the other measures that the US administration is currently thinking about. They have their reason to some extent as to why they exist. We may not like them, but there was thought behind the creation of them. So there you have it. If you ask me what is happening in March 2025 as regards the tariffs, so let's summarize. 4th of March, we're doing tariffs from Canada and Mexico and China. 12th of March, we're doing steel and aluminum. And then we're doing April, spring, early summer, we're doing the reciprocal tariffs. And then, of course, there is another announcement that we're expecting soon, and that is the tariffs on the European Union. So that's cars and lots of other products. So specifically targeting the products coming out of the European Union into the US. So we don't have any information on that, but we're expecting it to come in March as well. And then finally, of course, interestingly, the UK hasn't been mentioned yet. So there you have it. That's my update. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this answers the question as good and as quickly as I could. So thank you, and see you next time. And ask the customs manager. And please send me your questions.